Hi, my name is Rinka. I'm the owner and sole proprietor of Ricochet's Electrology. I sublease out of Chris's salon of electrolysis because she's my electrologist and the person that got me interested in electrology. She's a really cool person, so if you ever can't get into me, trying to reach out to her works out just as well. I do galvanic mainly, whereas she does blend mainly. And like, there's not much big difference between them, so don't worry about like if one's better than the other, though I think galvanic is better. Okay, so let's get into it. Electrology is the process of using electricity to treat each individual hair follicle in order to treat each individual hair follicle in order to kill it off so that it does not produce a hair anymore. We're only aiming to kill off the bottom third of the hair follicle, where the papilla, which is the blood supply, the bulge, which is the hair's matrix, and the inner root sheath, outer root sheath, which is just skin, but kind of stem cells as well, is. And we are aiming to kill them off because once you kill all three of those off, no hair can be produced. And if you leave any one of them alive, it is possible through stem cells in the skin that are in the bulb matrix or the outer root / inner root sheath, or even probably the papilla, that like those stem cells could transform into the other parts of the hair and in time rebuild it up and form a new hair and grow new hair. I mean, it can happen. It's not guaranteed to happen if like there's a few stem cells left alone, but overall I'm aiming to destroy those three parts because you want to kill off the blood supply, which is the papilla. You want to get rid of the bulb, which is the hair matrix, which is the hair is produced from, and then, you know, the inner root sheath and outer root sheath just forms the, the cavity in the skin that the hair sits in. So yeah, just get rid of them. To do that, we have three different forms of electrolysis we can do. There's galvanic, there's blend, and there's thermolysis, and I'll go through all three of them. So galvanic is the first one, and it's technically the oldest one, and it was patented in like 1890, but like it works all the same, and it's mainly the machine that's gotten better because the method on how to do it is pretty simple. You don't need to improve on a pretty simple method that works. What happens is I take a probe and I put it into your skin, and you have to hold this handheld electrode in your hand or whatever. It just really needs to touch skin, but your hand has thicker skin on it than like your leg does, so it's not really going to bother your hand. Anyways, you hold this, I put the probe in your skin, and I press the foot pedal. What happens is DC current runs into your skin. That DC current takes the water content and salt content in your skin, which is H2O and NaCl, and it separates them out continuously and recombines them into new stuff while the current's running. It creates H2 and Cl2, which are gases. They just simply escape out the top of the hair follicle and just dissipate into the air. And then it also creates NaOH, which is also named sodium hydroxide, which is also named lye, which is a weak acid and a liquid. And we use that lye to treat your hair follicle. That acid gets created in the hair follicle, and what it does is over 5 to 25 seconds, that's my average that I throw out there, over 5 to 25 seconds, it eats away at the hair follicle from the inside out. Because it's not really volatile like thermolysis does, I say it stays pretty self-contained in the hair follicle, so that like it has to eat away at the hair follicle before it can eat away at the rest of the skin and the surrounding issue. And by the time it's done its job and it goes inert, it has not eaten throughout the whole hair follicle, or it's not gotten far. So like, it's a pretty good method to keep your skin looking healthier as you go over and over and over. And blend does a pretty good job too of that, but it's got a little thermolysis in it, so whatever. We'll get into it overall. Galvanic, I would say, and most people would say, is the most effective method, but it's slow. Galvanic and blend both run between 7 and 13 seconds to treat one hair. I say I average between 7 and 8 seconds. And truly, if my machine were able to run at higher intensities, I could do galvanic quicker, but you'd just be in more pain. So generally, I choose to work at 7 to 8 seconds because the intensity I run at on average, which is like 0.7 milliamps, tends to not bother people as much. Like, you can do a fast blend or a fast galvanic and still be thorough, but the intensity is going to be cranked up and you're going to be like, ah, my face, I'm dying. So yeah, I don't like going that high. But even then at 0.7, some people are like, this hurts. I'm just going to slowly lean away from you. And it's like, whatever. It just goes how it goes. You'll see, it's not as bad as you think. I would say it's kind of like one line of ink tattoo is one hair treated, but the difference is the pain pretty much stops with electrolysis after I'm done treating that hair until I move on to the next hair. Whereas with a tattoo, your skin gets cut open by that tattoo gun to put the ink in. So like, it hurts afterward, it hurts during, it hurts afterwards, and you're gonna go home and it's gonna possibly feel bad for another while. Electrolysis, it stops hurting within like 2 to 4 seconds. If you're a very pain sensitive person, it might go on for 10 seconds, but it does stop. So yeah. Galvanic is chemical destruction using lye. It's generally considered slower, but the most effective. Moving on, we have thermolysis. Thermolysis is using AC current. So I put that probe into your skin. For thermolysis, you do not have to hold this, but you can if you want to, because it's always something to squeeze and hold on to if like you want to do a death grip because you're in pain or something. Anyways, put that probe into your skin, press the foot pedal. This time, AC current runs into your skin. And the AC current, if you remember anything about it, electricity, it's a sine wave. So it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, as long as the current's running. What it does is that AC current, sine wave, takes the water content in your skin and it vibrates the electrons back and forth with the sine wave. It does that 27 million times in 1 second. Except for the fact that with thermolysis, you generally use only pulses of current. So like 0.8, 0.1 second, 0.1 second, 0.1 second. And you do like 2 to 3 pulses of whatever it is. So that way you only are vibrating them like 7 million times. But anyways, with those vibrations, think of it as causing friction. If I do this 7 million times in like 1 second, my hands are going to be on fire and I'm probably going to have skin damage. And I can't do this in 7 million times. But those atoms can with the AC current. And what it does is it excites the atoms. And then eventually those atoms get so excited it starts causing heat friction. And that heat friction will eventually cause heat coagulation within that 1 second time span. And what you do, as I said right there, is you coagulate, you liquefy the hair follicle. It's a very fast method. It only takes 1 second to treat one hair, whereas like galvanic and blend, it could be 7 to 8 seconds, or with like a fast galvanic, fast blend, you could see like 3 to 4 seconds. But the other way, like thermolysis, 1 second, wow, it must be super amazing and super awesome. And the answer is like, it's a mixed bag. Thermolysis is more of a mixed bag than galvanic or blend is. Because it is heat destruction, it is more volatile and is more likely to cause problems with your skin. And they're only temporary unless you just like keep doing it or you like really fuck shit up. So getting into it, there's 3 things I don't like about thermolysis, and they would be the reason why I barely do thermolysis, even though it's a pretty quick method. The first one is that, like, with any of thermolysis, as soon as this probe enters your skin at the angle I put it in, which, you know, I did school learning and practice to get the angle right and inserts right. I don't know where that probe goes after it enters your skin. If you could think like your hair follicle reaches all the way down here, when I put this probe in, it might not be far enough that it can reach in there. It might only get to here, it might get to here, it might only get to here. Like, I mean, if you're a really bad electrologist, like, you'll only put it in here. It should at least get most of the way down, but it might not, I'll get all the way down there. And what can go wrong with thermolysis is that it does kind of like a hand grenade area of effect attack. If you could imagine, here, let's use this. If you could imagine, let's try and get this taut. Okay. You can imagine I put this probe down here and it reaches this pink flower. When I do the 3 pulses, the first pulse is going to be something like this. It's going to do a small circle. Second pulse is an even bigger circle and it starts forming more teardrop shape. Third pulse is an even bigger circle and it's more teardrop shape. After 3 pulses, it's been supposedly proven, according to the books, that like the area of effect will not grow in size after 3 pulses. You can't just keep going bigger. It doesn't work that way. It just dries that middle area out more. And what happens is when one area is dried out, the electricity will climb up the outside of the probe and start treating hair further up. And once that area dries out, it'll travel up the probe and do it again and again and again. And what happens is it will eventually reach the surface, but even before then, is like that is slowly getting closer and closer to causing skin damage, because like you should not be drying out areas. You should just be liquefying them. You should be turning them and liquefying them, not desiccating them, which is drying them out. That's called over-treatment. And then an even worse form of over-treatment that isn't even treatment is called follicle blowout. That's where, with thermolysis, I'm sorry, I've got to like burp. With thermolysis, if you put too much treatment energy in at once, instead of it causing you to over-treat and desiccate and dry out the hair follicle, what happens is it takes that water content in your skin and it vaporizes it. It turns it into gas. You put so much energy into there that they just went, and they just, what happens is your hair follicle, and like it's small, like it's self-contained. You're not going to hear like something go off, but what happens overall is it goes, and this area blows up, and then the current travels up the probe, and the next area goes, and then travels up the probe, next area, and like follicle blowout, it's really just turning all that water into a gas so that all of a sudden your probe is not touching anything and it just keeps traveling up, and it does that until it pops up here, and like it's not a good thing to do. There's some videos online from, I think, Mike Bono that show over treatment from hair follicle blowout, and it's cool. You can watch it, whatever. So over treatment's a lot easier to happen with thermolysis. It can still happen with galvanic and blend, but with galvanic and blend, it's going to be like 30 to 90 seconds to get over treatment settings to happen. With thermolysis, it could happen in 1 second, it could happen in 2 seconds. Like, that's a lot quicker. It could happen in 1 pulse, it could happen in 2 pulses, it could happen in 3, 4, whatever. So it's a lot easier to over treat with thermolysis. The first one I said is that you could miss treating the proper area the whole way. Like if I want to treat down here and I only insert to here, like I might not even treat this area, like, so that would be a failure. And then the third one is like if you have a lot of hairs close together, the book knowledge says like if you have 3 hairs that are very close together, kind of like this, to treat this hair and to treat this hair and just pull this hair out. And that's because that area of effect attack, it's not super big, but if you have hairs that are really close together, what happens is you're going to start treating this skin in between, and you're going to start over treating this skin. So like if you have a lot of hairs spread throughout, like say your whole face or whatever part we're working on, like you're going to start over treating all that excess, not excess skin, but the skin all around the hair follicles. And what lives in those that skin around the hair follicles is like your nerve cells or other things. And what happens is if I overtreat like a very hairy face, they're gonna come to me or they're gonna call me or text me within the next couple of days and they'd be like, I can't really feel my face here. And that's because I destroyed the nerve fibrils that sit around the area of the hair follicles. They will recover in time, but it can be very discomforting and weird to not be able to feel your face or wherever it is. So it's like, I don't want to do that. I did it once with a client and they got super pissed off at me. Not specifically for that, for something else I screwed up, but like, it's always something in my mind that like, I don't ever want to hurt another client like that. And like, we only did 2 or 3 treatments, but like, yeah, no, I don't ever want to cause that again to another client. So I tend to avoid doing electrolysis, or if I'm going to do it, it's going to be on some place that like, you're not really worried about stuff. Like your leg hair, yeah, let's do thermolysis. Your stomach hair, whatever, but not really your face, not really anywhere that like you see is really important. Okay, so yeah. I don't like thermolysis that much. I don't like how it feels, but I'll willingly do it if someone really wants to get it done. Okay, and then the last one is blend. Blend is a combination of the AC and DC current. With the DC current, with the galvanic current as it is, you create the lye. And with the AC current this time, instead of it being a high intensity AC current, it's a low intensity one. What it does is it still vibrates the water atoms, but this time, since we have lye being made, it also vibrates the lye atoms. And what that does is it takes the lye atoms, excites them, gets them excited, and that makes them work faster. So instead of it taking like 5 to 25 seconds for the lye to do its job, it's like 2 to 3 seconds, or really, I say 2, but I'll say like 2 to 3. And what that means is with blend, I can treat a hair and I can pull it right away. I can treat a hair and I can pull it right away. I can treat a hair and I can pull it right away. Just like with thermolysis, you can treat, pull, treat, pull, treat, pull, treat, pull. And that's different in comparison to galvanic, where you're going to want the lye to do its job. So you're going to treat like 2 to 6 hairs in a row, and then you're going to go back and pull those 2 to 6 hairs. But that's really the only big difference, besides like galvanic does not have thermolysis in it. Blend does. Like besides those 2 differences, galvanic and blend run the same, because you're mainly focusing on building up the lye in there to treat the hair follicle. So like you're still gonna have to create like 49 units of lye to treat this hair, whether it be blend or galvanic. And at that rate, if you have a lot of hair that I'm treating, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to treat 6 hairs and I'm going to pull the 6 hairs. So like, let's just do galvanic. Let's avoid the blend. Like, I don't see a reason to do it. So yeah, that's why I choose to do galvanic nowadays. And really, I started with blend, so it's cool. There's nothing wrong with it. But I was talking to another electrologist on Reddit, and you know, they yelled at me because I was giving some misinformation, because, you know, I didn't really learn specifically about galvanic in school, because they told me it was old, archaic, and slow. And then this electrologist came along and taught me a little bit better. And I was like, cool, I'll experiment on myself first. And then I liked it. So I was like, oh, I slowly rolled it out to my clients, and now it's like mainly what I use for clients. So yeah, that's kind of like why I chose to use galvanic. but I'll still do blend and thermolysis if you really want it. You know, some modalities feel better to others than they do to me. So maybe you like those too. Maybe your hair is really scattered and you don't mind doing thermolysis or blend or whatever. It's like, I don't super care, but I'd prefer to do galvanic. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. One thing to note is that people always wonder how many sessions is this going to take to clear my hair, and it's like, that's not how it works. Electrologists should tell you that it's going to take between 1 to 2 years to get you full permanent clearance of whatever area you're working on, and that's because hair grows in cycles. I don't have the piece of paper with me, and I wouldn't want to just like hold it up to your camera for you to look at, so it's on my website. But like, it shows an average that like hair on your face on average will have an active growth phase called the anagen phase for 52 weeks, up to 52 weeks on average. And then they'll have a telogen phase, which is called the resting phase, for up to 10 weeks. So on average, a hair will live on anyone's face up to 62 weeks. Unless you get rid of it somehow by like tweezing it or electrolysis or laser or waxing. Yeah, so hair grows in phases. So you could think of it like every week this cheek gets in, let's say 50 to 150 new hairs. And if I don't do anything to get rid of them, like tweeze them out, electrolysis, pull them out, whatever, like they'll just stay there up to 62 weeks. So what'll happen is 50 hairs come in week 1, 50 hairs come in week 2, 50 hairs come in week 3, 50 hairs come in week 4. We get up to week 15 or 20, and now you've got 2,000 hairs, I think. 50 times 20, yeah, 10,000. No, 1,000 hairs. Yeah, so 1,000 hairs are up here within 20 weeks if 50 hairs come in week to week. So what happens is if I clear this whole cheek of, I'll say, 1,000 hairs, the next week I would notice that 50 hairs came in. And what happens is we've got to get through all those hair cycles, and yeah, we got to get through all the hair cycles before you can see results truly coming in. But what also helps is if I clear all 1,000 hairs from here, what hairs don't die from electrolysis, because it's not like guaranteed every time to get rid of a hair might survive because maybe it's intelligent phase, maybe I didn't insert right, maybe I didn't put enough lye in there, maybe it's just lucky, maybe it's Maybelline, you know. I'll treat a hair, it might die off, it might not. If it doesn't die off, it's going to come back in 6 to 8 weeks, because it pretty much takes a little bit for your body to be like, that place just got beat up. Like, all right, let's try and produce a new hair. And if it can, it'll start producing a new hair, but it's going to take that hair 6 weeks from starting to grow for it to pop out of your skin. Well, 6 to 8 weeks. So generally, if I treat 1,000 hairs in week 1 that were stacked up of multiple weeks building up on my face, come week 6 or week 8, somewhere between there, the hairs that survived will come back. And let's say we have a 50% elimination rate. That means coming week 6, we are going to have 50 hairs plus 500 come in. And like, it'll repeat in all the different places that I do it. So if this cheek is 1,000 and I clear 1,000, well, 6 weeks later, it's gonna be 500 plus 50 here. If I do it over here, it's gonna be the same. So as you work throughout your face, you'll find that like hairs in different phases and whatnot, and like if you could clear it and keep it clear, you're gonna feel the best about it. But you know, like I have, this cheek is clear, this cheek has hair on it, my upper lip's pretty clear nowadays, my chin, it's kind of a constant battle because I get really lazy and don't work on it. But like over time, what you'll notice is like less and less hair comes in. Because if we go through all, say, like, if there's 52 cycles on your face, and say there is, if we go through all 52, what'll happen is they will eventually kind of get crunched into a 6 to 8 week period, because they'll all constantly keep getting reset and coming up 6 to 8 weeks later. So if we bring that all in and then we shrink it back down, it'll be in 6 to 8 weeks. And what happens too while you're doing all that and going through all the cycles is, like, that week, let's say week 2, 50 hairs that come in, when you treat it, if you kill off 50% of them, that means only 25 hairs are going to come back when they come back 6 weeks later. And when you treat that 25 6 weeks later, if you kill off half of them, only, since you can't do only partials, like we'll say 13 hairs or 12 hairs come back in that next time. So what happens is, as you're working through these like 52 weeks of hair cycles and condensing them down to 30, those earlier weeks that came in, you are just knocking them out and killing them off, that like they all of a sudden don't have a lot of hair. So you'll see immediate results with like your face getting clear or wherever body part getting clear immediately. Hairs will come in through new hair cycles and repopulate it, but you'll eventually notice like 3 to 6 months later, like it getting truly reduced. And that's of course given like it's a small enough area. If I were to do my full face, it would take like 24 hours for my electrologist to do. I'd have to sit in this chair 24 hours and get it work done. So what's going to happen is, no, we're going to spend 2 hours on this cheek, and then the next week we're going to spend another 2 hours on this cheek, and then the next week another 2 hours, and you're going to be like, like we didn't get anywhere. And it's going to be like, well, this cheek's clear, so I'm happy. But like, it takes time. You cannot say, if I'm working on this cheek, you cannot say your whole face is 1 to 2 years clear from when you just started, because we've only been working on this cheek. If we only get to this place 16 weeks later, like that place starts its timer of 1 to 2 years, 16 weeks later or 6 weeks later. I forget what I said. And I don't know. It's just hair cycles come and go. So you'll see, we'll reduce the hair, it'll come back, you'll reduce it, come back, and like it'll eventually come like, oh, yes, I only have 13 hairs that came in this week. And what you're going to eventually do is going to be like, well, I'm not going to come in every week. I'm going to come in every other week. Or like, you're going to switch it up. You're going to be like, I used to come in for 2 hours. Now I only come in for an hour. And then like later on, you're going to be like, now I only come in for 15 minutes. And then later you're like, now I only come in for half an hour every month, or like every 2 months. And like that's kind of how the journey goes, that like it might eventually spread, but beyond 2 years. But truly you're like, yeah, I show up like every 4 months or something. And like that's where you see a lot of older people are at, that like got it early on. They're like, yeah, through age, through hormones, like a few new hairs came up. And like, I'm just coming in here for like a 15-minute session. I only need 5 minutes of it to treat like those 7 hairs. And it's like, cool. Like, I hope to get there someday. Technically, I hope to get it where it's fully clear and I don't have to do shit, but whatever. So yeah, we talked about the 3 forms of electrolysis. We talked about hair cycles. Yeah, I can't ask you if you have any other questions. So like, let's just wrap it up here. Yeah. All right. You have a good night. Bye.